Hello and welcome to the game of Magnus Carlsen, where Carlsen faces a Grandmaster for the first time in his life. So for most people this is quite a painful experience. Usually they get crushed by the Grandmaster, but we will see that this is very much not the case for the young Magnus Carlsen. So let's go directly to the game. So Carlsen is 11 years at this point, 11 years old. His opponent is Bela Badea from Romania, Romanian Grandmaster. The game was played in 2001, so Carlsen is 11 years old. And actually now we do know, like by ex-post, that Carlsen only needed 2 more years to become a Grandmaster himself. And Carlsen's rating at this point is only 2064, his opponent is almost 2500. So let's go to the game. Carlsen is with the black pieces and the Grandmaster is with the white pieces. Comes knight f3, knight f6, and from this ready start we will actually go for a so-called Sicilian hedgehog type of position. So white plays e4 here, and we will see that white later plays also d4. So with one tempi less as usual, but white got this hedgehog position. So white has this e4 and c4 and e4 pawn, huge control over the center, while black has the usual hedgehog, so bishop on b7, knight on d7 and f6, other bishop on e7, and also for a usual position, white, black is actually up a tempi because white played d3 first and then later, and we saw, also played d4. So Carlsen plays a sort of unusual move with queen b8, with the idea of putting his rook immediately to c8 and try to exercise pressure on the c4 pawn. That comes f4, rook c8, b3 protecting the pawn, and here Carlsen would like to play d5, but his bishop is still in the ray of the white rook, so black has to move this bishop. So bishop f8, quite logical move. Bishop e3, a6, all normal. So black almost always puts their pawns on a6, b6, d6, and e6 in this hedgehog. There comes rook c1, and here the young Carlsen starts to be quite creative. So he plays the move rook a7. The idea is that you move your bishop to a8, the rook to c7, and then you double up on the c file, and then you can try to break up the position with putting b5 or d5 on the board. So comes bishop f2, bishop a8 according to the plan, and here white decides, well, all the black pieces are on the queen side corner, so let's do something on the king side, which is very logical. It makes the move f5, which is also sort of a double-edged move, because with f5, of course, you're trying to create some weakness here in the center, but you also give away the control of the e5 square, and one day the knight is going to end up on e5, and that knight is going to be just a major piece. So comes rook e8, protect this pawn, of course, and here white goes further with g4. Now comes e takes f5, and here white has two choices. You either take with either pawns that are more or less similar, or just take with the knight. So let's say white takes with the pawn, the e pawn, keeping his structure quite nice, but we can also see that actually his king is going to be quite weak. Now black can start some major exchanges, so takes, now only bishop can take because the queen has to guard the g4 pawn, another take and queen b7, king g1, and after say knight e5, the black knight finally arrived on e5. The black piece is actually very active. This queen is controlling the whole diagonal. There's already some threat of taking on g4. The only problem of black is that this rook is actually quite awkwardly placed for the time being. Probably it's going to be rerouted by rook e8 and e8 or something like this. And so black has a lot of counterplay. He has this weak pawn on d6, but the activity of his pieces is actually quite great. So the Grandmaster from Romania didn't like this position at all, so he decided to take back with the piece, so not allowing Carlsen to exchange pieces. Now comes knight c5, putting more pressure on the e4 pawn, so now actually the pawn is hanging. White has to defend this, and now comes the idea from Carlsen. Its rook from a7 transfers all the way to the center to e7, exercising a lot of pressure on the e file. And here actually the opponent of Carlsen more or less blunders. Plays the move knight d5. And here I invite you to stop the video and try to figure out why this move was not so good. So we can see that actually all black pieces are almost ideally placed. His queen on b8 looks quite strange, but also it's hard to put on a better square for the time being. And well, white has all these weak pawns in the kings are in the center. So we can start by eliminating this d5 knight. Obviously this is trying to take our rook or ruining our pawn structure, so we have to take it with the bishop, with the idea that if or when white takes back with the pawn, actually taking with the c pawn is probably a little bit better, but then strategically you are doing very bad with white. This knight is going to end up on e5, black is going to play g6 and bishop g7, and super huge control over the dark squares. So if we go back, so white decided to take with the e pawn. They probably didn't see the continuation of black, or he didn't like the other position I showed you where he was positionally just very bad. So here black can take on e1, and when white takes back, black can take again. The point is that after queen e1, knight d3, the queen goes somewhere, and once you take the rook, actually white cannot take this back immediately, because then black just takes the g4 pawn, so that was the whole point. This g4 pawn fell for black, and actually this position is just completely winning for black because this king is super weak. There are opposite colored bishops, and black is going to just very quickly mate the white king. He will play g6, h5, push this pawn down, put the bishop either on g7 or maybe h6, controlling all his diagonals. The black queen can enter either via a6 or b6 after playing b5, or just simply queen d8 and queen h4, and yeah, black is completely winning. The computer just says something like -4, so white is completely hopeless. So for that reason, the Grandmaster had to do something else, because he's completely lost against an 11 years old guy. So he played something else. He played the move g5, with the idea if you move your knight now, then white can finally take this piece back. But actually this position is also very uncomfortable for white. So you can play knight e5 here, play bishop e7, queen d8, putting pressure against this g5 pawn, and trying to again go after the white king. Also another plan is to put bishop d6 and then bishop b6 after b5. So yeah, black is doing very well. So I would personally prefer this move. So after g5, just move your knight and go for the same position that I showed after queen c1, knight g4. The only difference is that actually here after g5, knight d7, sorry, knight d7, black is not up a pawn, but he has all the strategical advantages I mentioned before. There's also a plan, if you want, you can just take on b3, and after gf you put your knight back on c5. This also looks quite good for black, but actually here white has quite some counterplay. So queen g4, there's some pen, there's some knight f5 coming. It's not that easy, so that's why I would personally prefer to just play knight d7 and so g5, just move your knight and then go on with having the huge positional advantage. And here Carlsen played yet another move, which turns out to be sort of the way he started to go down. So it was his first mistake, taking on a2. But we will see that after g takes f6, knight b4, now the knight is back, but on b4 is actually very passive. And the problem is that after take bishop e4, white will be able to organize an attack against the black king. So we have opposite colored bishops, meaning that the attacking side has the advantage that whichever squares this light square bishop can attack, the dark square bishop cannot defend. And also this knight is way out of the game. So white is going to very quickly put his pieces up, so queen to g4, knight to f5, and this looks quite dangerous. Carlsen brings his queen closer, queen e8, queen g4, and getting out of the pin with king h8. And here comes quite a strange move from white. He plays the move king f1. Frankly, I don't really understand why he made this move. The most straightforward continuation, which would be queen h4, is already actually really good. So queen h4, we are trying to checkmate here, so we have to play something like h6. After knight f5, white is doing very well, threatening to take on h6, on d6. This knight is beautifully placed. This other knight, the companion, is actually completely out of play. This bishop controls also the squares back there, so this knight is very passive. So white is doing actually close to winning. So it's quite surprising that white just makes the move king f1. It's a bit strange. So here comes queen d8 with the idea of Obviously queen f6 check, immediately using that white played this queen f1 move. Now comes knight h5, threatening to checkmate here. Comes bishop e5, queen f5, and here actually Carlsen makes the final mistake. So it's very hard to defend already because all these white pieces are close by. This bishop is more or less a useless piece against this e4 bishop and all the light squares. So all black has is this queen to defend. This knight is mentioned several times, is completely out of play. But actually the best strategy here would be to run. So just play king g8 and run away. And the computer says that actually this is still a fight is still on, so the computer says it's equal. But so black manages to just run away. And surprising, in this position there is no final blow that white could deliver. So this would have been a lot better, but Carlsen made the move king g8. And here again I invite you to stop the video and find the final, no, there is a final blow, so find a way to beat the 11 years old Magnus Carlsen. So queen protects this pawn, but the problem is that when we play the move knight f6, black is just collapsing. So now obviously we're trying to take the queen. If you play queen g6, that seems like the most natural move. After queen c8, your queen is immediately gone, so this cannot be played. Also, you cannot play either queen g7 or something like this because queen c8 is once again just going with checkmate. You also have back rank issues. If you move your queen somewhere there, actually that's hanging, but whatever, so you cannot move that way either because the h7 pawn is hanging. So the only move is bishop f6, but after take, queen g7, queen d8, queen g8, this d6 pawn just fell. This knight again is completely out of play now, it's even under attack. Carlsen played one move, king b6, a5 and queen b6, and after queen e8, queen h6, Carlsen finally resigned, while his knight is still completely out of play. He's also getting checkmated, or white can also just choose to make a few queens in the center. So, well, Carlsen resigned. So this was his first game against the Grandmaster, only 11 years old, and we could see that he really put up a very nice game, and he had really great chances. So if we go back to something like move 26, so this position is incredibly good with black. So after g5, yeah, I think the best way would have been just play cool like knight d7, put the knight on e5, and then yeah, you are just better against the Grandmaster, see what he can do. But yeah, so Carlsen went after the material. Knight a2 was a step to the very wrong direction, and then later on he got mated in the king side. So yeah, that's for the first game of Magnus Carlsen against the Grandmaster. You could actually also compare his first game with the other top players. I made videos about their first game against the Grandmaster, so I already showed how Alireza played against the Grandmaster. It was also a very interesting game, and it's also true for Judith Polgar. So you can check out all those games. They are going to appear on the final screen. Otherwise, the next video I'm going to make is going to be about the Hungarian talent Richard Rapport. So his one of his young games. So see you in that video.